Well, I'm not going to come up with the ideal combo. I am going to talk from a clinician's point of view about how we should think about new combinations with study design. And Jordan talked about the drugs. These are my conflicts of interest. And I'm going to talk about study populations, safety. Poonam's talked about it, so I can go quickly. Endpoints, no. Study design, and follow-up. So when we think about study populations, you're all familiar with the heterogeneity and the different phases of hepatitis B infection. And as of this time, we treat chronic hepatitis, that is active inflammation, high ALT, with fibrosis. And that's either chronic hepatitis, immune active, e-antigen positive, or negative. But what we really need, if we had optimal therapy, is where we could cure hepatitis B early, get rid of high viral load before there's liver damage, before there's hepatocellular carcinoma. And you can see when you look at this slide, the enormous heterogeneity in patient and virus. And we really have to consider this when we're talking about design issues. How do we manage heterogeneity in the hepatitis B population? Do we treatment naive or nuke controlled? Which populations goes first, and what's the risk benefit? So when we talk about the hierarchy, I think everybody agrees that the highest need and the biggest gain from effective therapy are those who have active disease, have chronic hepatitis, high viral replication with inflammation. But if you think about the greatest lifelong impact, those are the patients who have immune-tolerant disease. They have high viral load and normal ALT and low inflammation, and they actually have the greatest dynamic range to assess a treatment effect. The low replicating, low inflammation, either inactive or chronic infection rather than hepatitis, or those controlled on nukes, are the easiest to recruit because they're most of our patients. They have less safety issue. They have actually a higher likelihood of S loss because they tend to have lower quantitative surface. And I think if we're talking about special populations, cirrhotics, HIV-infected, transplant, and children, they should really wait till we have more safety and efficacy. So if we look on the left-hand side, what's the heterogeneity? Age, sex, race, ethnicity, geographic region, stage of fibrosis with or without cirrhosis, whether they have active inflammation, high ALT, whether they have comorbidities, fatty liver, metabolic syndrome, co-infections. We know from a couple of studies, one of them ours, where 23% of chronic hepatitis B patients, predominantly Asian, had fatty liver and metabolic syndrome. So that's a huge number, and these aren't morbidly obese patients. They get fatty liver, they get metabolic syndrome at a lower BMI. So we really need to consider this as we may be thinking the patient's not getting a benefit because they have a secondary disease. When we think about the virus, everybody's talked about the different variations. And therapy, we really have 3 different groups of therapy. Do we do naive, treatment experienced, or nuke suppressed? So how do we evaluate this heterogeneity? I think you should exclude cirrhotics, especially in early studies. You may exclude patients who have very high ALT, who may be about to seroconvert and become inactive on their own. You have to consider how you're going to manage patients with comorbidities. For the virus, you can randomize or stratify on e-antigen and quantitative surface levels. You should probably exclude low surface antigen levels. If they're going to lose surface antigen on their own, don't say it's due to my drug, and stratify on therapy. So should we use nuke suppressed or patients off treatment? In favor of having nuke suppressed patients is, as has been said earlier, there's a potential for additive or synergistic effects. Surface antigen levels tend to be lower, so it's a better starting point for loss. Better safety if they have ALT flares. There's a reduced risk of drug emergent resistant that we heard about, and it's obviously the easiest recruitment. But favouring off treatment, we actually don't usually know the duration of nuke therapy, and it's not uniform in patients, so that really eliminates another confounder. We're better able to assess the independent contribution of the new drug, and you may, in fact, the drug may need to have inflammation to see an effect. And you're better able to evaluate viral dynamics if they're not on therapy. Should we stratify by E? I think this is a bit controversial because you already heard the FDA said yes. But, you know, this is what we've always done. Does that mean it's what we always should do? It's a simple way to reduce some heterogeneity. It does reflect the likelihood of S loss. In E antigen positives on nukes, it's still a pretty low S loss, but it's very rare in E antigen negatives. And it may yield important mechanistic insights separating E antigen and positive and negative patients to enhance and accelerate drug development. But on the other hand, it may not matter with new drugs. Remember with hepatitis C, we were also rigid about what you could and you couldn't include, and drug companies said, forget it. And they went and it worked. It didn't matter whether it was high viral load, low viral load. It didn't matter if it was IL-28B positive or negative. So I think we have to keep an open mind. And is it an artificial separation? Because the E antigen negative patient was E antigen positive before. And seroconversion may not be a marker of treatment efficacy, because you can have E antigen negative active disease. And recruitment might be easier if you don't worry about E antigen status. Food for thought. So stratify or adaptively enrich those patients. I do want to take a moment to talk about immune-tolerant patients, because there are currently no approved therapies for these patients. The placebo arm is therefore ethical. There's low risk of liver complication in the short and medium term, so the risk-benefit analysis may be low depending on what drug you choose. It's more homogeneous. They tend to be younger. They have less comorbidities. They're less North American, European badness. They are young with lower likelihood of fibrosis. They have very high viral loads, so you have a wide range to look at efficacy. And safety issues are better because they have less fibrosis. They may tolerate ALT flares better. And the target population includes children or adolescents, so we can get some data on them. So when we think about study populations, we really have three main adult target populations: the immune active, either naive, nuke suppressed, or treatment experienced, immune tolerant, and inactive hepatitis B. And when you can deal with the heterogeneity by exclusion, by randomizing on E antigen or stratifying on nuke therapy or not, and stratifying on the quantitative surface level. We know if the level is lower, you have a better chance of clearing, so I think it'd be important not to mix everybody in together. So what about safety? I won't mention this because it's already been discussed, except the last point, off-treatment flares. We know patients, when they stop nukes, can have flares after, and it can be many months later. So we have to put into our algorithm, how do we follow these patients and monitor them for flares? I think that's critical for safety. Endpoints you've already heard discussed, and the only thing I want to bring up is this slide from Jordan that reminds us that surface antigen loss is fabulous, but actually becoming inactive has excellent, on the left, survival compared to those with active disease, and on the right, very low incidence of HCC, or lower than those with active disease. So very inactive disease, and ideally surface loss, is associated with long-term excellent clinical outcomes. And actually that's what the patient's interested in. They don't care about their cccDNA. They just want to know, are they going to dance at their daughter's wedding, and are they going to live to be 85 like their mother did? So these are both good goals of therapy from natural history studies, loss of surface antigen and also the inactive state, so decreasing HBV DNA and normalizing ALT. So a couple of points, I think we've heard this at great length, but I wanted to bring up the different targets, as Jordan said, may block different steps of HBV replication. So do we need to study different endpoints? We really need the immunologist to tell us how to monitor immune-mediated immunomodulatory drugs. We can't use the same thing as we use for an antiviral. To remember that we may have a false negative, that if you have integrated DNA, you may not be producing, you may not have CCC DNA, but you may have silenced it, but you can still have surface antigen positive. And just a caveat that surface antigen decline may be slow. So again, we need some long-term therapy to see an effect. We don't want to throw out the drug if it's actually doing something. And if you're going to use quantitative surface as a marker, what decrease are you going to use? And we had some discussion about that. Should you use it as a positive predictor or a negative predictor? And is surface antigen decline enough to move forward with a drug achieving the inactive state? I would say that's what we have now, an inactive state. If you could have an inactive state off all therapy in E antigen negative, that would be a positive. Do we want liver biopsies? Not for efficacy. We have good virologic markers that we haven't talked about, but non-invasive markers. But they might be critical to evaluate mechanism of action, especially if we're talking about immune modulators, but also fine needle aspiration and single-cell laser capture microdissection can actually look at viral targets as well in the hepatocyte, as well as looking at immune cells. And could they be used to assess toxicity and flares with liver disease? I don't know the answer to that, but I think we ought to look. And finally, study design. What control groups? Poonam brought this up. You can use current therapy if that's what's recommended. But if therapy is not recommended, you should use placebo for immune tolerance or inactive, rather than historical controls, because that really eliminates some of the heterogeneity. And remember, for E antigen positive patients who are immune active, current guidelines recommend waiting 6 months for spontaneous resolution, and sometimes we forget that. And of course, those who have to stay on therapy, we have to give them, we have to use historical controls for them. So this is the traditional clinical trial phases you're all aware of, but it's the adaptive design that Poonam talked about, where you have pre-specified modifications based on interim analyses. So here on the left, you randomize 5 different arms, then you do an interim analysis, you do your statistical analysis, and then you do response adaptive randomization. If a drug doesn't work, you drop it. If there's toxicity, you drop it. And then you can expand the arms that look valuable to adjust the sample size all within one study and can move from phase 2 to phase 3. This is a very valuable technique that's much used at the present time in some of the studies presented today. I won't mention basket, which is throw everything in and ask the statistician to work it out, but I will mention platform, because platform is very interesting because it's what's used in cancer trials with a single infrastructure, random assignment, sequential analysis with early stopping rules and a common control arm, but it really requires collaborative efforts with multiple stakeholders to provide the drugs, provide the patients, and assess them. So if you're MD Anderson and large, big cancer centers, you come together, you get the companies to give you the drugs, and you throw them into platform, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and even down to 6. But for us to do it, it won't be one company that can do a platform trial. Will it be the NIH? Will it be academic groups? Will it be the HBV Forum? I think this is a big question that nobody's talking about. And follow-up, long-term follow-up is critical because surface loss can occur after 6 months SVR and flares can occur late. So in summary, patients with the highest need first, immune active, then patients with the highest gain, and I would say they're the young immune tolerant. They're the patients we should be considering. And we need to define groups with sufficient homogeneity to ensure accurate assessment of efficacy, which is the big challenge. And that's why an adaptive trial helps. You can use exclusion, stratification, randomization, and then adjustment and analysis. Endpoints are virologic, combinations should be rational, but each may not need to be effective as monotherapy if they're safe and they're synergistic together. Trial design should be innovative, look to adaptive platform designs, and look to collaborate. And I think this is the critical thing to hasten getting a cure. Thank you.